The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out like a small city. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the curved seats that rose in spiraling tiers toward the crystal dome ceiling. The air buzzed with alien voices speaking, in languages that human ears had never heard before today. Some creatures clicked and whistled, while others made deep rumbling sounds that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. Ambassador Kyle Martinez stood at the human podium near the center of the great hall. His gray hair was neat and his blue uniform pressed, but his hands shook slightly as he looked out at the sea of alien faces. Next to him, Lieutenant Susan Blake held a data pad that showed Earth's military resources. The numbers on the screen were not encouraging. Humanity had spent decades building their space program, but they had only managed to create one ship capable of fighting in deep space. The emergency session had been called because of a threat that made every species in the galaxy nervous. The Zephyrian Empire had declared war on the peaceful Viridian colonies. The Zephyrians were a race of warriors who looked like walking crystals. Their bodies were made of a hard, clear material that could deflect most weapons. They had conquered dozens of worlds, and now they wanted more. The Viridian people were the opposite of the Zephyrians. They were tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the light. They had large eyes that showed kindness and wisdom. For thousands of years, they had lived in peace, creating art and music and poetry. They had no weapons and no soldiers. When the Zephyrians came, they would have no way to fight back. Prime Council leader Zex Thara floated above the center of the chamber. She was a being of pure energy contained inside a crystal shell. Her voice echoed through the hall as she spoke about the coming war. The Zephyrian fleet was already moving toward Viridian space. They had 10,000 ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The fleet moved like a dark cloud through space, bringing death to any world that stood in their way. Kyle looked down at his notes one more time. Earth's leaders had sent him here with a simple message. Humanity wanted to help. They knew they were new to the galaxy, and that other species saw them as primitive. But they could not stand by and watch innocent people die. He cleared his throat and activated the translation system. The human delegation offers our assistance to the Viridian people, Kyle said. His voice carried across the vast chamber. We pledge our support in their time of need. The reaction was immediate and harsh. Laughter filled the hall, but it was not the warm sound of human amusement. The Kithara delegation made sharp clicking sounds with their mandibles. These insect-like beings had 4 arms and compound eyes that sparkled with cruel humor. The Goliath representatives, who looked like living mountains of stone, made deep rumbling sounds that shook the floor. Even the normally polite Aquarians, whose bodies were made of living water, rippled in patterns that clearly showed their amusement. A Cathara delegate stood up, his forearms waving in the air. The humans offer 1 ship against 10,000. He clicked. This is either a joke or madness. More laughter followed. Kyle felt his face grow hot with embarrassment, but he stood straight and kept his dignity. Susan Blake touched his arm gently, giving him strength. She had been his aide for 3 years and had never seen him back down from a challenge. Prime Council leader Zex Thara raised her energy form to get attention. When the chamber grew quiet, she spoke directly to Kyle. Ambassador Martinez, we appreciate your species' desire to help. But surely you understand that sending 1 vessel against the Zephyrian fleet would be suicide. We cannot allow such a waste of life. Kyle was about to respond when another voice cut through the chamber. It was War Admiral Zefkar of the Zephyrian Empire. The alien appeared on a holographic display, his crystal body gleaming with what looked like armor. His voice was cold and full of pride. Let the mammals come, he said. We welcome their participation. It will save us the trouble of hunting them down later. One tiny human ship will provide good target practice for our gunners. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species argued that humanity should not be allowed to throw their lives away. Others suggested that the humans were too new to the galaxy to understand the true power of the Zephyrian war machine. A few quietly admired the human courage, even if they thought it was foolish. The Viridian representative, Chancellor Veltara, stood up slowly. Her silver skin seemed to dim with sadness. "We are grateful for any help," she said. "Our worlds have no defenses. Our people are already fleeing, but there is nowhere to run. If the humans wish to stand with us, we welcome them." Kyle felt a surge of determination. He activated his communication link to the UES Defiant, humanity's only battle-ready starship. Captain Lisa Thompson appeared on his screen. She was a woman in her 40s, with short brown hair and steady green eyes. Behind her, Kyle could see the bridge of the human vessel. It looked small and simple compared to the alien ships he had seen. "Captain Thompson," Kyle said, "the Council has made its position clear. We are alone in this fight." Lisa nodded. "We understand, Ambassador. My crew knew the risks when we volunteered. We're ready to depart for Viridian space." War Admiral Zethkar's laughter filled the chamber. "Excellent. We will be waiting for you humans. Your deaths will serve as a warning to any other species that might consider opposing the Zephyrian Empire." Kyle looked out at the assembled aliens one more time. Most of them were already turning away, considering the matter closed. They expected the human ship to be destroyed within minutes of entering the battle zone. Some had even begun placing bets on how long the used Defiant would survive. But Kyle remembered something his grandfather had told him long ago. "It's not the size of the dog in the fight," the old man had said. "It's the size of the fight in the dog." He activated his microphone for one final statement. "Humanity does not measure courage by the size of the fleet," Kyle said. "We measure it by the willingness to stand up for what is right, no matter the odds." The chamber fell silent. For a moment, even the mockers seemed to consider his words. Then the session ended, and the aliens began to file out. Kyle and Susan gathered their materials and prepared to leave. In 18 hours, the UES Defiant would reach Viridian space. The galaxy would then see what humans were truly capable of. The UES Defiant moved through space like a silver needle threading through the darkness. Captain Lisa Thompson stood on the bridge, watching the stars stream past the main view screen. Her ship was small compared to the massive vessels of other species, but it was built with the best technology that humanity could create. Every system had been tested and retested. Every crew member had been chosen for their skill and dedication. Lisa turned to face her senior officers. Chief Engineer Carlos Rivera was a man in his 30s with dark hair and calloused hands from years of working with machinery. Dr. Alex Johnson, the science officer, was younger with blonde hair and sharp blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Weapons Officer Rachel Stone was a woman with red hair pulled back in a tight bun and the steady gaze of someone who had never missed a target. "I won't lie to you," Lisa said to her crew. "The odds are against us. 10,000 enemy ships against 1. But we're not just fighting for the Viridians today. We're fighting to prove that humanity belongs among the stars." The crew listened in silence. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not return home. But none of them had hesitated when the call came. They were the best that Earth had to offer, and they would not let their species down. Dr. Alex Johnson stepped forward with his data pad. "I've been studying the Zephyrian technology for the past 6 hours," he said. "Their ships use energy shields that can deflect plasma weapons and particle beams. Most galactic militaries use these same types of weapons, so the Zephyrians have built their defenses around stopping them." Rachel Stone frowned. "What about our kinetic weapons? Our rail guns and missile systems?" Alex smiled for the first time in days. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd ask. The Zephyrians have never faced projectile weapons traveling at the speeds our systems can achieve. Their shields are designed to deflect energy, not solid matter moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Carlos Rivera wiped his hands on a rag and looked up from his engineering console. The fusion drives are our biggest advantage and our biggest risk, he said. I can push them to give us acceleration that no other ship in the galaxy can match. But if I push too hard, the system will overload and we'll be dead in space. Navigation Officer Paul Adams was a quiet man with brown hair and steady hands. He rarely spoke during meetings, but when he did, everyone listened. I've calculated our approach to the Viridian system, he said. The Zephyrian fleet will arrive 6 hours before us. If we're lucky, we'll find them engaged with whatever defenses the Viridians have managed to put together. If we're unlucky, we'll arrive to find a massacre already completed. Lisa nodded grimly. Either way, we go in. The Viridians are counting on us. In the engineering section, Technician Mary Foster led a team of specialists in making final modifications to the ship's systems. They were installing experimental armor plating made from compressed carbon nanotubes. The material was incredibly strong, but had never been tested in actual combat. Mary ran her hands over the smooth black surface and hoped it would be enough. The armor should be able to withstand energy weapons better than conventional materials, she explained to her team. But we won't know for sure until someone shoots at us. The ship's weapon systems were unlike anything else in the galaxy. While other species had moved to energy-based weapons thousands of years ago, humans had perfected the art of throwing things very fast and very hard. The main gun was an electromagnetic railgun that could fire tungsten slugs at 10% of light speed. The impact of such a projectile would be devastating to any target. Rachel Stone ran her weapons crews through drill after drill. The railgun had to be precisely aimed and timed. At the speeds they would be traveling, they would have only seconds to acquire targets and fire. This, and they might not get another chance. Remember, Rachel told her gunners, we're not trying to have a prolonged firefight. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we keep moving. Stand still for more than a few seconds, and we're dead. Dr. Alex Johnson worked with the ship's computer systems to analyze everything known about Zephyrian tactics. The enemy preferred to fight in large formations, using their overwhelming numbers to surround and destroy their targets. Their ships were heavily armored and well armed, but they were also slow and difficult to maneuver. They're used to fighting enemies who use similar technology, Alex explained to the senior staff. Energy shields, plasma weapons, predictable flight patterns. We're going to give them something they've never seen before. Carlos Rivera had been pushing the fusion drives harder than they had ever been pushed before. The engines were designed to provide steady acceleration over long periods, but Carlos had found ways to make them produce short bursts of incredible speed. The cost was enormous stress on the system and the risk of complete failure. I can give you maybe 3 or 4 bursts at maximum power, he told Lisa. After that, we'll need time to cool down and recharge. If we're still fighting by then, we'll have to rely on conventional maneuvering. Paul Adams had been studying the Viridian system for hours. He knew the position of every planet, every asteroid, every piece of debris large enough to affect their flight path. His plan was to use the gravity wells of the planets to slingshot the UES Defiant around the system at speeds that would make targeting nearly impossible. The enemy will try to predict our course, he said. But if we use gravitational assists correctly, we can change direction in ways that will confuse their tracking systems. Communications Officer Danny Wright was a young man with nervous energy and quick fingers. He had been monitoring alien communications channels trying to understand how the galaxy was reacting to humanity's decision to join the fight. Most species were placing bets on how quickly the human ship would be destroyed. The average estimate was less than 30 seconds. "Let them underestimate us," Lisa said when Danny reported what he had heard. "It will make our job easier." As the hours passed, the crew of the UES Defiant prepared for battle in their own ways. Some wrote letters to family members back on Earth. Others checked and rechecked their equipment. A few gathered in the ship's small chapel to pray or meditate. All of them knew that they were about to make history, one way or another. The ships. Dr. Patricia Hayes prepared the medical bay for casualties. She was a skilled surgeon who had served in Earth's military conflicts, but she had never treated injuries from alien weapons. She studied the data on Zephyrian plasma burns and energy weapon effects, hoping she would not need to use the knowledge dot in the ship's mess hall. Cook Sergeant Tim Brooks prepared what might be the crew's last meal. He made simple food that reminded them of home. Beef stew, fresh bread, apple pie. The familiar tastes gave the crew comfort as they faced the unknown dot as the UEC Defiant approached the Viridian system. Lisa Thompson stood alone on the bridge during the quiet hours of the night. Shift. She looked out at the stars and thought about the path that had brought them here. Humanity had always been explorers and fighters. They had sailed unknown oceans, climbed impossible mountains, and reached for the stars themselves. Now they would find out if that spirit was enough to survive in a galaxy full of enemies. The countdown to battle had begun. The UES Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Viridian system, and the sight that greeted them was worse than anyone had imagined. The Zephyrian fleet had arrived early and was already attacking the peaceful worlds below. Massive, crystalline ships surrounded the 3 inhabited planets like hungry predators circling wounded prey. Explosions lit up the darkness as orbital stations and civilian evacuation vessels were destroyed one by one. Captain Lisa Thompson gripped her command chair as the scope of the enemy force became clear. The Zephyrian dreadnoughts were arranged in perfect formation, each ship at least 50 times larger than the UES Defiant. Their crystalline hulls gleamed like deadly jewels in the light of the system's star. Plasma cannons fired continuously, turning space into a deadly light show as they systematically destroyed everything the Viridians had built. Communications. What are we getting from the enemy fleet? Lisa asked. Danny Wright's face was pale as he worked his console. Captain, they're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. But they're laughing at us. The alien mockery came through the ship's speakers even with the translation systems struggling to process the Zephyrian language. War Admiral Zethkar's voice boomed across space with cruel amusement. Foolish humans. You bring one pathetic vessel against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? We will vaporize you as an example to the galaxy. Lisa felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. All stations battle ready? Carlos, I need everything the engines can give us. Rachel, prepare the main gun. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Red lights bathed the command center as the ship went to full combat alert. Throughout the UES Defiant, men and women took their positions and prepared to face impossible odds. They had trained for this moment, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality of facing 10,000 enemy ships. Dr. Alex Johnson studied his sensor readings with growing excitement. Captain, my analysis was correct. Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons. Our kinetic systems should be able to punch right through them. Rachel Stone's fingers danced over her weapons console. Main railgun is charged and ready. All missile tubes are loaded. We have nuclear warheads standing by. The Zephyrian response was swift and overwhelming. War Admiral Zethkar had decided to make an example of the human ship. Dozens of plasma Beams lanced out from the nearest dreadnoughts, each one carrying enough energy to melt a small asteroid. The beams converged on the UE's Defiance position and across the galaxy. Observers prepared to witness the brief and spectacular death of humanity's only warship. But Lisa Thompson was not going to die easily. Carlos, maximum acceleration now. The fusion drives roared to life with power that exceeded every safety protocol ever written. The UE's Defiant shot forward like a bullet fired from a gun, accelerating to 30% of light speed in mere seconds. The G-forces should have killed everyone aboard, but the crew had trained in high-gravity environments, and their bodies could handle stresses that would crush most alien species. The Zephyrian plasma beams, aimed at where the human ship had been, struck empty space. The enemy targeting systems had been designed to track conventional vessels with predictable acceleration curves. They could not adjust quickly enough to follow the UE's Defiant's impossible movement. Impossible! War Admiral Zithkar roared from his flagship. No ship can accelerate like that. Their crew should be dead. But the human ship was very much alive. Paul Adams had plotted a course that used the gravity wells of the system's planets to slingshot the UE's Defiant around the Zephyrian formation. The ship moved like a fighter plane among bombers, too fast and too agile for the massive enemy vessels to track. First target acquired, Rachel Stone announced, firing main gun. The electromagnetic rail gun discharged with a sound like thunder. The tungsten projectile, accelerated to 10% of light speed, struck the nearest Zephyrian dreadnought amidships. The kinetic energy of the impact was beyond anything the alien shields had been designed to handle. The projectile punched through the crystalline armor like a hot knife through butter. The enemy ship's reactor core erupted in a brilliant explosion that lit up the entire system. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Zephyrians had lost a vessel to what they considered an inferior species. The destruction of the dreadnought sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet as crews tried to understand what had just happened. Direct hit, Rachel shouted over the cheers of her gun crew. Enemy vessel destroyed, but there was no time to celebrate. The Zephyrian fleet was already adapting, trying to surround the human ship and box it in. Lisa ordered another acceleration. Burst, and the UE's Defiant shot past 3 more enemy vessels before they could react. Carlos Rivera watched his engine displays with growing concern. The fusion drives were operating far beyond their design limits. Captain, I can give you maybe 2 more bursts like that before we need to shut down for cooling. Make them count, Lisa replied. Paul, get us behind their formation. Rachel, target their command ships. The UE's Defiant wove through the enemy fleet like a dancer performing a deadly ballet. The Zephyrian ships were massive and powerful, but they had been designed for conventional warfare. Their plasma cannons could not rotate fast enough to track the human vessel, and their energy shields were useless against projectile weapons. Mary Foster's experimental armor proved its worth as near miss. Plasma beams left only scorch marks on the compressed carbon nanotube plating. The material absorbed and dispersed the energy in ways that amazed even its creators. The ship that should have been destroyed by the first enemy salvo continued to fight. Second target locked, Rachel announced. This one looks like a command vessel. Another railgun shot thundered from the UE's Defiant. This time, the tungsten projectile struck a Zephyrian command ship directly in its bridge section. The explosion was smaller than the first, but the effect was devastating. The ship lost all coordination and began firing randomly at its own vessels. Admiral Zethkar's tactical officers scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. Admiral, the human weapon systems are completely outside our combat databases. Our computers cannot predict their attack patterns. Then we will use superior numbers, Zethkar snarled. All ships converge on the human vessel. surround it, and destroy it with massed fire. The Zephyrian fleet began to move, but their massive ships were slow to change course. The U's Defiant was already gone, using another gravitational slingshot to appear on the opposite side of the formation. Dr. Alex Johnson had identified a weakness in the enemy's communication network, and Lisa was about to exploit it. Target their communication array, she ordered. If we can disrupt their coordination, they'll be fighting blind. The third railgun shot was Rachel's masterpiece. The tungsten projectile struck the main communication relay of the Zephyrian fleet at precisely the right angle. The explosion created a cascade failure that left dozens of enemy ships unable to communicate with their command structure, the Zephyrian. Formation began to break apart as individual captains tried to engage the human ship on their own. But the U.S. Defiant was too fast and too unpredictable. It would appear long enough to fire a devastating shot, then vanish into the maze of gravity wells and debris fields that Paul Adams had mapped. "Admiral, we're losing ships faster than we can count them," reported Zethkar's tactical officer. "A human vessel is picking us apart." For the first time in his long military career, War Admiral Zethkar felt something he had never experienced before: fear. This single human ship was doing what entire fleets had failed to do. It was breaking the power of the Zephyrian Empire through sheer audacity and superior tactics. "All ships full retreat," he finally ordered. "We withdraw to regroup and analyze this new threat." But Lisa Thompson was not about to let the enemy escape. "Carlos, one more burst." "Paul, plot an intercept course for their flagship." "Rachel, prepare our nuclear arsenal." The U.S. Defiant made its final acceleration, streaking toward the Zephyrian command ship like an arrow from a bow. The enemy tried to escape, but it was too late. The human ship had marked its target, and nothing would stop it from completing its mission. The explosion of the third Zephyrian ship sent ripples of shock through both fleets. Across the galaxy, alien observers who had been watching the battle with casual interest suddenly found themselves on the edge of their seats. The single human vessel was not just surviving against impossible odds, it was winning. War Admiral Zethkar stood in his command center, his crystalline form trembling with rage and disbelief. His tactical displays showed red markers where his ships had been destroyed, and more yellow warnings where vessels had been damaged or disabled. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like the human fighting style. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. His aide, a younger Zephyrian officer named Kreldar, checked his console with shaking hands. 17 destroyed. "Admiral, 34 damaged. The human ship is moving too fast for our targeting systems to track." Captain Lisa Thompson felt the weight of command as she watched her crew work with desperate efficiency. The U's Defiant had taken some hits, but Mary Foster's experimental armor was holding. Scorch marks covered the hull where plasma beams had struck, but the compressed carbon nanotube plating had absorbed most of the energy. "Carlos, how are the engines holding up?" she asked. Chief Engineer Carlos Rivera wiped sweat from his face as he monitored the fusion drives. "We're running at 110% of rated capacity, Captain. The system is holding, but I can't guarantee how much longer. The heat buildup is enormous." Dr. Alex Johnson was coordinating with the ship's computer to analyze the enemy fleet in real time. "Captain, I've identified a pattern in their formation. They're using a networked shield system where each ship supports the others. If we can create a cascade failure, we can take out multiple targets with one shot." Rachel Stone had been making every shot count. Her railgun crews were working like machines, loading and firing with perfect precision. "We're down to 60% ammunition, Captain, but every shot has been a hit." The battle had become a deadly game of cat and mouse, but it was becoming clear that the mouse was winning. The U's Defiant would accelerate to impossible speeds, fire its devastating kinetic weapons, then use gravitational fields to change direction in ways that violated every alien understanding of physics. Navigation. Officer Paul Adams had turned the Viridian system into his personal playground. He knew the position of every planet, every asteroid, every piece of debris. His course calculations allowed the human ship to appear and disappear like a ghost, always where the enemy least expected it. Next pass will take us through the asteroid belt, he announced. The Zephyrians won't be able to follow us there. Their ships are too big. The asteroid field had been a mining operation before the war began. Now it provided perfect cover for the smaller human vessel. The UE Sephiant threaded between rocks that would have crushed the massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts, emerging to strike targets that thought themselves safe. War Admiral Zethkar was beginning to understand that he was facing something completely new. The humans did not fight like any other species in the galaxy. Their single ship moved with the speed of a fighter, but hit with the power of a battleship. Their weapons were primitive by galactic standards, but devastatingly effective. All ships form defensive clusters, he ordered. Support each other with overlapping fire. Do not let the human ship isolate individual vessels. But the Zephyrian formation was already falling apart. Ship captains who had never faced a real threat were panicking. Some vessels tried to flee, while others charged forward, seeking revenge for their fallen comrades. The careful discipline that had made the Zephyrian Empire feared across the galaxy was crumbling under the assault of a single human ship. Lisa Thompson saw the enemy confusion and pressed her advantage. Paul, take us straight through the center of their formation. Rachel, prepare rapid fire sequence. We're going to hit them where they least expect it. The UE Defiant accelerated toward the heart of the Zephyrian fleet. Enemy ships converged from all sides, their plasma cannons creating a deadly crossfire that should have vaporized any vessel caught in the middle. But the human ship was not. Where they expected it to be at the last possible moment, Paul Adams executed a gravity-assisted turn that bent the laws of physics. The UE's Defiant shot straight up relative to the galactic plane, emerging above the enemy formation like a predator, diving on its prey. Multiple targets acquired, Rachel announced. Firing everything we have. The railgun thundered again and again. Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked from their tubes. Conventional kinetic weapons added their own deadly contributions. The human ship's entire arsenal was unleashed in one devastating salvo that caught the Zephyrian fleet completely off guard. 4 enemy ships exploded simultaneously as tungsten projectiles punched through their hulls. 2 more were crippled by nuclear detonations that overwhelmed their shields. The remaining vessels in the formation scattered like frightened animals, their careful coordination destroyed by the ferocity of the human attack. Impossible, War Admiral Zethkar screamed. How can one ship do this much damage? His bridge crew had no answers. The human vessel was operating outside every tactical manual in the Zephyrian military database. Their computers could not predict its movements or calculate effective countermeasures. The ship fought like a living thing, adapting to every situation with deadly creativity. Dr. Alex Johnson was analyzing the enemy's communication patterns when he made a crucial discovery. Captain, their command ship is trying to coordinate a retreat. If we can take out their flagship, the entire fleet will lose cohesion. Lisa nodded grimly. Then that's our target. Carlos, I need one more maximum acceleration burst. Can you give it to me? The chief engineer looked at his displays and made a decision that would either save them or kill them all. I can give you one more, Captain. But after this, we'll need at least an hour to cool down the system. Then we'd better make it count. Paul, plot an intercept course for the enemy flagship. Rachel, prepare our heaviest weapons. The U.E.'s Defiant made its final acceleration run, streaking across the battlefield. Like a comet, the Zephyrian flagship was a massive vessel, 3 times larger than any other ship in the fleet. Its armor was thicker, and its weapons more powerful. But none of that would matter if the human ship could get close enough for a killing shot. Admiral Zethkar saw the human vessel approaching and ordered every weapon on his ship to fire. The space around the U.E.'s Defiant erupted in plasma and energy as the flagship's guns opened up. But the human ship kept coming, its experimental armor absorbing punishment that should have destroyed it. "Target their command section," Lisa ordered. "End this now." Rachel Stone had been saving her best shot for this moment. The railgun charged to maximum power, drawing energy from every available system on the ship. The tungsten projectile that emerged from the barrel was accelerated to 15% of light speed, carrying kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The shot struck the Zephyrian flagship directly in its command center. The armor that had protected War Admiral Zethkar from 100 battles crumpled like paper. The explosion that followed could be seen from orbit around the Viridian homeworld dock with their command structure destroyed. The Zephyrian fleet began to collapse. Ships that had been fighting in perfect coordination just moments before now fled in all directions. Some tried to surrender while others attempted to ram the human vessel in suicide attacks. But the U.E.'s Defiant had done the impossible. Of the 10,000 ships that had entered the Viridian system, fewer than half would escape to tell the tale. The rest were destroyed, captured, or left drifting in space with their crews surrendering to a single human vessel. The age of Zephyrian dominance was over. The galaxy had a new power to reckon with, and they would never underestimate humanity again. The aftermath of the Battle of Viridian changed everything. News of the impossible victory spread through the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication networks that connected every civilized world. The species that had mocked humanity's offer of help now watched recordings of the battle in stunned silence, dotting the great chamber of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kyle Martinez stood once again at the human podium. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. The beings who had laughed at humanity's single ship now listened to his every word with respectful attention. The mockery was gone, replaced by something humanity had never experienced before: genuine respect. "The human delegation does not seek conquest or domination," Kyle said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "We ask only for the same recognition and respect given to all sapient species in this galaxy." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Viridian representative, Chancellor Valtara, stood first. Her silver skin seemed to glow brighter as she spoke. "The Viridian people owe their very existence to Captain Lisa Thompson and her brave crew. We would be honored to establish full diplomatic relations with Earth." One by one, other species rose to offer their own agreements. The Kithara delegation, who had clicked their mandibles in amusement just days before, now approached the human podium with genuine curiosity. The Goliath representatives, beings of living stone who had rumbled with laughter at humanity's offer, now spoke of mining rights and trade agreements. Even the energy beings of the Zexthara collective, who rarely showed interest in physical species, admitted they had severely underestimated human capabilities. Prime Council leader Zexthara herself floated down from her position to speak directly with Kyle. "The Zephyrian Empire has terrorized this galaxy for generations," she said. "That a single human vessel could break their power is beyond our understanding. How did you accomplish what entire fleets could not?" Kyle smiled, remembering the words of his grandfather. "We learned long ago that it's not about the size of the ship. It's about the size of the heart inside it." Captain Lisa Thompson found herself promoted to Admiral and given the task of building Earth's first interstellar fleet. The U's Defiant became the template for a new generation of human warships. They would be smaller and faster than the massive vessels preferred by other species, but they would pack devastating firepower into their compact designs. The crew of the UES Defiant became heroes throughout human space. Chief Engineer Carlos Rivera was recruited by dozens of alien species who wanted to understand human propulsion technology. His fusion drive designs became the foundation for a new generation of starships that could outrun anything else in the galaxy. Dr. Alex Johnson found himself at the center of the first interspecies research initiative. Alien scientists who had dismissed human knowledge as primitive now competed for the chance to work with him. His analysis of enemy weaknesses had changed the way the galaxy thought about warfare. Weapons. Officer Rachel Stone became the most sought-after tactical instructor in known space. Her precise shooting and innovative targeting methods were studied at military academies throughout the galaxy. Young officers from a dozen different species came to learn from the woman who had brought down the mighty Zephyrian Fleet. Navigation Officer Paul Adams revolutionized space travel with his gravitational assist techniques. What had been emergency maneuvers during the battle became standard procedures for any pilot who wanted to maximize their ship's performance. His methods allowed smaller vessels to compete with much larger ones. The Zephyrian Empire, once the terror of the galaxy, was forced to sign a peace treaty that included massive reparations to the Viridian colonies. Their military was disbanded, and their conquered worlds were returned to their original inhabitants. War Admiral Zethkar, if he had survived the destruction of his flagship, was never seen again. Trade routes that had been closed to human vessels for decades suddenly opened up. Species that had considered Earth a primitive backwater now competed for the right to establish embassies in human space. The galaxy had learned a fundamental lesson about humanity that would never be forgotten. The battle footage became required viewing at every military academy in civilized space. Young officers studied Captain Lisa Thompson's impossible maneuvers and tried to understand how one ship had defeated 10,000. The phrase, "never underestimate the humans," became common wisdom among spacefaring species. But perhaps the most important change was in humanity itself. For the first time since reaching the stars, humans walked with confidence among alien species. They had proven themselves worthy of respect, not through conquest or intimidation, but through courage and skill. The UES Defiant was eventually retired and placed in the Galactic Museum of Military History. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the small ship that had changed everything. A simple plaque beside it read, "They laughed at humanity's lone ship until it entered the battlefield." New human colonies were established throughout the galaxy as other species invited them to settle in their systems. Earth's population began to spread among the stars, carrying with them the spirit that had made the victory possible. Each new world became a testament to human determination and ingenuity. Ambassador Kyle Martinez was promoted to Earth's first Galactic Chancellor, a position that had been created specifically to handle humanity's new status as a major galactic power. He often reflected on how quickly things had changed. One battle had transformed humanity from outsiders to leaders. The Viridian worlds, saved from destruction, became humanity's closest allies. Their artists created beautiful monuments to honor the crew of the UES Defiant. Their poets wrote verses about the day the humans came to save them. Their historians recorded every detail of the battle so that future generations would never forget. Other species began to study human culture and history, trying to understand what had created such fighters. They learned about humanity's long history of conflict, about the wars that had shaped them and the struggles that had made them strong. They began to respect not just human military ability, but human spirit. The galaxy had become a different place. The age of massive fleets and overwhelming firepower was giving way to an era of speed, precision, and tactical innovation. Human designs influenced shipbuilding throughout known space, as engineers tried to copy the advantages that had made the UES Defiant so effective. Young humans who had grown up dreaming of the stars now found opportunities waiting for them throughout the galaxy. They became explorers, traders, scientists, and diplomats. The barriers that had once kept humanity isolated were gone forever. Captain Lisa Thompson, now Admiral Thompson, stood on the bridge of humanity's newest flagship and looked out at the stars. The U's Defiant had been small and alone when it entered the Viridian system. Now it was the first of many, the beginning of a fleet that would protect human interests and human allies throughout the galaxy. The laughter had stopped. The mockery was gone. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors of the innocent and defenders of the weak. They had proven that courage and determination could overcome any odds, and the galaxy would never be the same. The age of human expansion had begun, and with it came the promise of a better future for all species willing to stand together against tyranny and oppression. The U's Defiant had fired the first shot in a new kind of war, one fought not for conquest, but for freedom. And in the darkness between the stars, other threats stirred and took notice. The galaxy had a new defender, and they would have to find new ways to spread their darkness. But that would be a story for another day. For now, humanity had won its place among the stars, and the future was bright with possibility.